But for this to be written in 2020, and I remember writing a piece, an op-ed in 2021, in December 2021, um about reproductive rights being debated, and then the leak happening last month or June. Everything's bleeding together.
Yeah, time.
This is June. Oh my gosh, I thought it was July. Give me a second. Give me a second.
The recording's in progress.
Yes. Hi, friends.
Hello. How's it going?
It's good. This week has been very good.
Yes, it's like in your smile and it's in your voice and just overall energy. That was like a genuine good.
Yeah, it's great. It's a good day. It's a good week. It's a good time.
Good.
How are you?
I am good. Oh, I should preface, I'm getting over some form of an infection. So if I just start coughing, I'm fine.
And I'm so sorry.
It'll be fine. But I just want to preface that I think I should be fine.
Is it like, yeah, okay. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
I can and will send you tea.
Always.
Okay. Got to put that on my to-do list. I've started doing to-do lists.
Oh, okay.
I got this cute little pad that says you've got this on top of it.
That is very cute.
And so it has like to-do list, notes and doodles, appointments, must get done today, health and fitness, water intake. I also started drinking a lot more water too.
Good.
That was a lot of everything. So, taking care of me and that energy and all that.
Yeah.
Yes. I will put tea on your to-do list. Any particular flavor, because the tea company that I use now officially has like new flavors. So I'm going to send you a link so you can pick out a flavor.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yay.
Yay. Everything's good.
That's so great. Oh my goodness. So we before we started recording, we were talking about our Fangirl 5, and I would like you to go first, because here's the bad thing. I don't know who your Fangirl 5 is. Whenever you said their names, I don't recognize them. So I would love to hear all about them.
Okay, so for my Fangirl 5, I chose Sam Ewis and Lynn Williams, who are two U.S. women national team players for the soccer team. And they have a podcast called Snacks, and it brings me so much joy. They're like late 20s. So in our age group, and they're like so cool, but also like really weird, just that like fantastic mix that I really connect with. And so I just wanted to certainly highlight their podcast. If you're in need of some joy, I definitely recommend it. It is amazing.
So like, so tell me about their podcast. Is it like they talk about snacks?
Their first podcast, they very much will talk literally about their favorite snacks. But in each episode, they talk about fun stuff, real stuff, soccer stuff, and I think silly stuff. And so they're talking, like, they tackle on their lives as professional athletes, because they both play in the National Women's Soccer League here in the United States. And then they also talk about like their relationships. They talk about social justice or mental health, like very serious stuff. And then at the end, they always ask like very silly questions to each other and their guests to kind of like round it out. It's the full package.
I love that, because like for someone like me who is not good at sports, I just recently found out what offsides meant the other day, and I still don't know.
Offsides in which sport?
Wait, what?
What? What's the context?
There's more than one types of offside. Okay. What?
That's
a soccer term, right?
Oh yeah, there definitely is offsides in soccer.
Where else? Oh, football.
Yes. That's why I was just like,
I'm an embarrassment to my Texan roots.
But you know, offsides in soccer, I feel like that's impressive. They're not that long ago, I couldn't tell you like any soccer rules whatsoever.
No, I think I'm more familiar with the offsides in football now that you mention it. Don't tell my dad.
So Hannah knows offsides in both sports.
Barely. We're barely there. Oh my goodness. That's so exciting though that their podcast is it's very well rounded and like I also just love podcast hosts that genuinely get along.
Okay.
Like I'm gonna listen to it and I'm very excited about it.
Yes, I recommend it. What about you? Who are you fangirling?
I am fangirl fiving Simone Biles and the rest of the women's gymnastics team, as well as like everyone else that is going in on this lawsuit against the FBI for over $1 billion for screwing up the investigation into Larry Nassar and his abuse of athletes. Because here's the thing, that takes so much courage to be able to even put yourself in this position, first of all. Second of all, this is like the second or third lawsuit that is happening due to this case. And so many people failed them, and yet they are still standing.
Yeah.
So that is a huge thing that I just have so much respect for these athletes. I'm always going to respect a gymnast too, because I do not understand aerodynamics and physiology and how they are able to do that with their bodies. Most athletes I do not understand, but in particular, like gymnasts, no clue.
Yeah, it's a very niche kind of thing that a world that I have not tapped that well into.
Like I can't wrap my brain around it. I genuinely can't. And also like in particular, like Simone Biles for really just calling out like the toxic work culture of professional athletes and how like mental health matters. It's just as important as physical health, because these are top tier physical peak human beings, but your mental health is still just as important. And what she did at the last Olympics, I will forever respect as someone who has struggled with mental health and as someone that works in mental health. Like, just so amazing.
Yeah, she certainly has taken a big stand. And like you said, there was a lot to lose for them to go towards this lawsuit and for Simone Biles to step down like she did. So certainly, I agree with you. I certainly fangirl over her daily.
Yes. And we were also talking about how like, okay, so I'm 5'0" and she is like 4'10", I think 4'9", 4'10", and I just want to be her friend.
Yeah, that's true. Like this tiny human who has all this impact that I mean, I don't even know if I like met her if I could speak, because I would be so like I would be so starstruck.
Oh my goodness. Just all of that. All of that. What a kind of just great way to like kick off our discussion about reproductive justice, talking about justice and the abuse of female bodies, and how like just this time that we are in right now is very historic, and all that is going on with reproductive justice. This chapter was thick.
Yes. This chapter was full of information. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes. Like what was your first big like punch in the face, oh my gosh, moment from this week?
I just overall like the fact that she talks about how reproductive health needs to be reframed. She talks about how it needs to just not talk about reproductive health, but every aspect of health and how it affects all of us who are able to reproduce. And then she specifically gets into trans healthcare. And she talks about just the barriers that trans people have to getting adequate medical support. And so that just made me think, like, I forgot what conversation we were talking about where it's like, oh, probably about mental health and how if a Black or brown person goes into therapy and deals with the same kind of discrimination and racism that they deal with outside in everyday life, that dissuades them from going to therapy. And I feel like it's the same way for this population. If trans people have to continuously deal and be traumatized by the healthcare system, then that dissuades them from actively pursuing it. And who can blame them? And we are all deserving of adequate healthcare.
Like, oh my goodness. I know that we've like mentioned Megan Torres, the social worker, Instagram handle, trust me, I'm a social worker. And she has talked about her experience in the state of Ohio with racial justice in the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
She is currently in a lawsuit against the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, to be able to escalate it to the point of a lawsuit, the amount of re-traumatization that you have to put yourself through, just to be not only like recognized, but to get those reparations, like, takes incredible courage. And like, we've been following her story for over a year. We were just talking about this the other day, how like I mentioned this case maybe like last February. And for it just now to get to a lawsuit. It's been a journey, just reading and supporting her from Instagram. But it's also just like a perfect example of the racial discrimination that women of color face in the healthcare system.
Yes. It's the fact that it had to get to a lawsuit is quite discouraging, because that means they're not admitting that they did something wrong. So how is any other person who's not like a white man or a woman supposed to go in there when they're not able to recognize, oh, we actually did harm and we should correct that so we could be better in the future?
Like, at this point, the NASW has been involved. Like, the highest tiers of these healthcare organizations have been involved and have somehow touched this case. And now they're wanting to wash their hands of it. And I am like, I'm gonna actually, like, once I get my next paycheck for plant sitting, I will be donating some of that to her legal fund, because come on.
Yeah. And I think this is what Mikki Kendall's talking about. Feminist movements, they need to latch onto things like this. It needs to be more about all of us and what we all have access to or don't have access to, as opposed to just the subjects that are mainstream for the feminist movement.
I went to the reproductive justice march a couple of weeks ago. Me and some of my friends. It was in Union Square. It was awesome. I highly recommend attending peaceful protests, quote unquote. Okay, that's also a loaded phrase by saying peaceful protest, because there was no proper way to protest and tone policing and all of that stuff. Okay, now that I've put that disclaimer out there, it was pretty chill because it was raining, but but I do encourage everyone to exercise their right to protest for our rights, because there is a very, very close connection, apparently, from Roe v. Wade and the right to privacy, and how if that's overturned, it could also affect our trans brothers and sisters as well.
Interesting.
So I think Mikki Kendall did such an amazing job by connecting reproductive health with trans health in this chapter. And I can't get over like that connection of it too. Also, just a fun other thought that popped into my head. Apparently, a woman could not apply for her own line of credit until 1974. Read that randomly today, and so I was just also just like, Why does this society hate women?
1974. Oh my gosh. That really is not that long ago.
No.
Oh. I did not realize that was the year. I knew it was ridiculously late, but that's like concerning ridiculously late.
They just started trusting women with their own credit in 1974. They trusted women with the vote in 1920. So we're only 100 years into that.
Mm-hmm.
We got a long way to go, people.
That is crazy. I know I saw a tweet earlier today and it was like, relationships used to last a long time, and then I think the response was women literally did not get the right to, I think it was about credit. Women didn't get the right to have credit until at that time.
Yeah, like people married out of frigging necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And by people I mean women and female presenting bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like once we have our liberation, we are able to fully participate in society, and we don't need to lock ourselves in toxic relationships, abusive
Mm-hmm.
relationships. We're able to do it ourselves, and that is another huge reason why like reproductive justice is so important too.
Yes. Yeah, the autonomy and the independence that I feel we're all entitled to it's perfectly tied in for sure.
There are still doctors out there requiring a husband's signature or whatever permission for a woman to make a choice on whether or not she wants to have her reproductive system like worked on, tubes tied, whatever you want to call it.
Wow.
In the year 2022.
Oh my gosh, that actually kind of reminds me of like when someone's trying to hit on you and you say no thanks, and the only thing they will accept is because you're already in a relationship with someone else, as opposed to just accepting your no as like you're not interested.
Like a conversation that I have had with my own doctor. They are no longer my doctor because I moved out of state. Just preferencing that was, I'm not sure if I ultimately ever want to have children. Have you seen the world we live in, first of all? And then second of all, I don't want to change my last name. Nothing to do with a medical procedure at all. It was just a comment. And they were like, but your husband will have something to say about that. And I was like, that was so many assumptions wrapped into one sentence.
But I mean, yes, a lot of assumptions. And then even if that is the case and you do get married and your partner does have something to say about that, so what? It's your last name. I think you should get the say.
Exactly. Like all of it. It's a giant ball of yarn and we're just trying to tease it out. But it's like someone threw it in a giant industrial fan that they use to like cool down warehouses.
Yeah. It is not great. We certainly have a long way to go.
Oh my goodness.
Was there anything in this chapter that stood out to you?
Just the sheer truth of Kendall writing, in a climate where society doesn't value families of color, comma, is it any wonder that the right to have children at all is still contested? I've heard people talk about having children is a privilege, not a right. So that's also a loaded statement.
Yeah, very.
It's like, for us to live in such a like fourth wave capitalism hellscape, for having children to be a privilege.
So loaded. So loaded. Especially with our history. And I mean, we could definitely like slide into eugenics, but I think in some levels, I think kids are absolute blessings. And I think people are very lucky to have them. Everyone's not capable. But if we're talking about, and Mikki Kendall definitely talks about this, that society thinks some kids are worth having and some kids aren't, then I feel like that phrase could be used to justify that as well. It's just so loaded. It just depends on who's saying it and why.
I know.
What did you read that as?
In a climate, okay, it talks about often advocates the center on access to contraception at the expense of communities that are still facing other obstacles. True reproductive justice involves not only access to affordable birth control, abortion, healthcare, but also providing access to those who are imprisoned, who are in immigration detention centers, who are seen as unworthy of controlling their own lives for a variety of reasons. Like the fact that so many people do not see reproductive justice as it's a mode, it's a vehicle for control over bodies. Like white supremacist patriarchy is slowly losing control over minority populations' bodies. And they're trying to get it back in any way, shape, or form possible.
Which is, I mean, it makes no sense because, of course, they're not doing things logically.
No.
But it makes no sense because then ultimately, like, we're all dealing with the consequences, not just us, but them as well.
Yeah, it's all about exuding control over bodies that they can no longer control. And they are grasping at straws at this point.
And this is why we talk about toxic masculinity and like the patriarchy, because like that's where all of this is at its root. Is you have to address that, or else we get bills like this, which we all are harmed by.
Like for this to be so, once again, when was this published? 2020? I want to say
I believe that was the conclusion.
It was 2020? 2020. Yeah, copyright 2020. Doesn't have the month. But but for this to be written in 2020, and I remember writing a piece, an op-ed in 2021, in December 2021, about reproductive rights being debated, and then the leak happening last month or June. Everything's bleeding together.
Yeah,
this is June. Oh my gosh, I thought it was July. Give me a second. Give me a second. For all of this to be just so incredibly relevant. Like, and also just like that reproductive justice isn't just about reproductive systems. And that it is tied to so many of our civil rights.
Yeah, Mikki Kendall definitely has a quote about that where she talks about reproductive justice. It's very contingent on like socioeconomic status and race and privilege, because I know I saw earlier and she mentions it. I guess I don't have it highlighted. She mentions that a lot of people who already have kids living in poverty just like make a decision like having an abortion because they know what it takes to support a kid and they don't have the means to do so. And I saw that earlier too. I think towards the beginning of when the leak happened, the population who mostly have abortions. But I don't want to get too caught up in that because I feel we don't get to judge whether we like the reason someone has an abortion or not. Like their right is not contingent on if we as a society decide that we like it or not. It's a right, and what people do with that right is their business. We have no say so in that.
It's literally like I just cannot. It's so hard to have a conversation with people in the whole team of like you shouldn't have a kid if X, Y, and Z, and like, you don't deserve to have a kid. Why don't you deserve to have a kid? Or if you have a kid, you can't take care of it. Why did you have a kid? Like, like those trigger sentences, I guess I will call them, just make me want to throw a brick.
Yeah.
I'm not going to actually throw a brick. I have a friend in law school now, and she has told me for legal purposes, I now have to say I'm not actually going to do it. Hypothetically, it makes me want to throw a brick.
That's actually great advice. Because I feel like there are a good amount of threats on this podcast.
I'll have her listen in and like give us the lowdown on if we're gonna ever get sued.
So Hannah's not gonna throw a brick, but like, no, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Because apparently, hypothetically speaking, I can't even fill a trash bag full of pillows and accidentally run into someone with them. Because hypothetically, intent still matters whenever it comes to criminal code and laws and whatever. I've gone over this with her many times.
Yeah, you seem to have like an in-depth understanding of what you cannot do.
Yep. So I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to fill a trash bag with pillowcases, because apparently if someone gets hit with a pillowcase still with vicious intent, they can still sue you.
Wow.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah. I did not know that either. But I think you bring up a really good point of like the contradiction. I think it goes back to like how in many ways the system wasn't meant for a lot of people, because if you have kids, you can't take care of them, then you get blamed and there's like no social support. But then if you don't have the kids, you also get blamed. You can't win.
It sucks being in a female body, and it sucks even more as a person of color being in a female body in this society. That's the reality of it. I also love how Kendall just calls out there are some very real problems with the way anti-choice groups will use children as props in their campaigns. Hi, I am example A.
That quote definitely stood out to me, and it made me think about, I forgot the page in the
page 34.
Yes, page 34, when they talked about adoption being a reason why abortion should not be legalized or people should continue to have access to it. I was just like, wow, how timely, Mikki Kendall.
Page 34 refers to the domestic supply of infants. And we call ourselves adoptees. I'm actually part of the international supply, so that's a small little asterisk in there. And it, like, so much of the enigma that is reproductive justice, just it bleeds into so much of our society that people don't even think about, because they think about having a baby and they're like, oh, okay, but it touches social security, it touches education, it touches the horrific healthcare system that we have, obviously. Then we get into why does a small group of like 8 people, 6 people, 8 people, how many justices are there? I don't remember.
That's a good question.
10? This is bad.
I want to say, I don't even want to say it. No, I don't even want to say how much I think, because
I'm going to say 8.
Probably wrong.
I'm going to say 8.
How many Supreme Court?
Because I remember an episode of Parks and Recreation whenever or 9. I'm gonna say 9 because I remember an episode of Parks and Recreation when Leslie found out she was pregnant with triplets. Spoiler alert. She was like, we could give birth to 1/3 of the Supreme Court.
That's funny. It is 9. You are correct. Ding, ding, ding.
So it goes into who elects these. Oh my gosh, the president appoints them. Oh my gosh, who elects the president? Oh my gosh. It's what is the electoral college? Oh my gosh. why do two people in the US Senate have to represent like an entire population of a whole state? Oh my gosh, it just all of it.
Yeah. As I learn more about our political system, I'm like, this makes no sense. Why is this set in stone? Why do we do it this way? Why is there an official way for senators to stall to not pass things? How is that a thing?
I want to chew on this microphone. like whenever we start talking about reproductive justice, yes, it touches every aspect of our society because it just does.
Yeah, which is why I love Mikki Kendall really emphasizing, and I don't think I really understood what she was saying until she talked about trans people and their access to healthcare. But we need to expand the definition. Reproductive justice, the first thing you shouldn't think about is abortion and abortion rights. It's all types of healthcare. They all affect your ability to reproduce.
Mm-hmm. And then I also want to bring up whenever like Kendall writes, when the pro-life movement brings up the women who abort fetuses with Down syndrome diagnoses, reproductive justice advocates need a better response than ignoring it.
Yeah. Oh, chills. Yes, I just and she definitely goes into how, I mean, I hope people they don't understand because they keep using this argument, but if you say someone who's like differently abled, someone with a disability, like, do you hear what you're saying? You're talking about an active population, people who are humans who have rights. And the fact that you decided that these groups deserve to live in these groups, it's okay if you have an abortion because you think this group doesn't deserve to live as much. Like, how could you say that?
All aspects of society. Reproductive justice touches disability rights. It touches healthcare. It touches like our electoral system. It's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally one of the core things that is just everything right there.
So again, when you hear reproductive justice, I hope you don't just think abortion rights. That is certainly the hot topic right now. But I mean, the amount of people who have adequate health care is not in any way the number it should be. I feel like this is a continuous thing. I know in a lot of our elections, universal health care is definitely one of the hot topic items specifically for Democratic candidates. So it needs to be all of that.
Yep. And we have people that are trying to ban drag queens.
I did see that.
Texas.
And of course, like in Texas, you don't think we have a more pressing matter than drag queens?
They didn't just have a mass shooting that killed 21 people?
Nothing more pressing? No other control legislation that would actually be beneficial?
You are actually not allowed to own more than 6 adult phallic shaped toys in Texas, but you can own like an unlimited amount of guns.
The priorities are just so questionable. Yes, I did see that though, and I was just like, is this real?
I'm tired.
I would hope not, but it is very real.
I am extremely tired of Texas. I vote we give it back to Mexico.
It's theirs as far as I'm concerned.
It's theirs. So is like another stupid amount of square mileage of the southwestern United States.
That's true. I do want to highlight when it comes to pro-choice, because that is the hot topic right now. It's not like a partisan thing. There are sitting Democrats who are anti-pro-choice right now. So just watch out. I don't want you to fall into that trap. Of course, like the Republican Party is overwhelmingly pro-life, so like anti-choice, but there are some Democrats in that same boat.
It's hard. And then you have the aspect of religion brought into it, and where they made it a religious crusade.
Yes. And it's, first of all, we live in a country that is not supposed to be governed by religion. There is supposed to be a separation of church and state. And AOC talks about in her last Instagram live, which I will certainly link, because watch it if you have not already. It's like a theocracy. If it's governed by religion, it's not a democracy at that point.
Yep. It's a straight up theocracy. Like, that's and like, okay, for like, is it all right if I disclose like my religion on here?
I think it's fine. I think we've been very clear.
Okay, we've been clear. Wait, one of our biggest bonding moments in grad school was the fact that we were a part of a Bible study of social workers. Okay, people. So don't think that like, because we have all of these thoughts, we're all of a sudden hating on Christian and like we're anti-Christian, anti-religion. We're not. I got into a fun discussion, and every time I say fun discussion, I mean it was very with an Instagrammer who will not be named because I also forgot their name already. Oh well. Who was just like, you can't be Christian and pro-choice. And I was like, hi, I'm Christian and pro-choice. Nice to meet you. I exist.
What? As far as I'm concerned, those are like two very different arguments. My religion has nothing to do with my pro-choice stance. Nameless Instagram person, you need to read your Bible.
Oh, it was so funny because they did start quoting the Bible at me. And for those of you that need a fun refresher on my life story, I'm a pastor's kid, so I know the Bible.
Hannah knows the Bible better than anyone else in my life. She'll just like pull out random stories or scriptures that are perfectly applicable, just like out of your memory.
It's a fun time. I give props to the paramilitant program called Bible Drill. And that one church camp that I went to that made us raise our Bibles and scream swords as loud as we could. Just screaming swords.
That's interesting.
I know, right? That's stuff I go over in therapy all the time. Fun time. So like, back to theocracy, controlling women's bodies, controlling female presenting bodies, controlling all bodies that are not white, male, cisgendered, heterosexual. Like,
yeah, I saw a clip where Madam Vice President Kamala Harris asked Brett Kavanaugh, is there any law? And I just saw the clip. I didn't watch the full video. The clip, she asked, is there any type of law that governs men's bodies? And he just like looked and like did a sly smile. And he was like, I'll answer a more specific question. And the fact that he couldn't say no, I think speaks volumes.
Oh, Kavanaugh.
It's true. There's no stringent control over anyone's bodies, but those who are capable of reproducing.
And once again, it also goes into the kind of medical research that is funded as well. Do we have men's birth control? We do not. Is Viagra supported by health insurance? It is. But do you know how much a woman has to pay out of pocket in order to receive? I don't know the procedure is called, but to get her tubes tied.
It's not covered by most insurance?
It's an elective surgery.
Oh Oh,
Just like
man.
LASIK, which I also still think that like the fact that like healthcare and an eye doctor is not covered by your basic health insurance. I need my eyes to freaking see, people.
Yeah. It literally makes no sense to me. I had to pick separate from insurance, dental and vision. It's like, are dental and vision not a part of my overall health? I'm confused. This doesn't make sense.
I hate it here. I hate it here. It's bad.
It's weird to me that they can determine what's elective or not. I feel like if you've got a primary care physician who's like, hey, I mean, if the person in themselves is saying, I need this, I don't understand why there needs to be outside sources to say, yes, this is necessary or this is elective and yes, we'll cover it. No, we won't. That feels weird. Like we are paying for that. I'm paying for this. It's not like it's just in a given resource.
Like, and also, I just wanted to acknowledge that in terms of medical advances that we now know of have come at the expense of Black and brown bodies.
Yeah.
So even if you are on the pro-choice side of things and you're not acknowledging that reproductive healthcare and a lot of our healthcare came at the expense of the bodies of people of color, you're not doing the movement any favors.
Yeah, you certainly have to understand that history because it is nasty and it is bad and it informs today's procedures and today's care.
Yep. And I'm still waiting for reparations to be paid all around to literally everyone. Like, we talk so much about our defense budget, but we never talk about a budget for freaking reparations to people that have been like that the government and society as a collective has caused harm to.
I finally got around. Go ahead.
I'm a strong believer in reparations. I say I will pay higher taxes for justice to be served in the sense that people will receive monetary compensation for the hurt done to them by this society.
Yes, I agree. I would certainly pay more for that. I finally, well, a little time ago, I finally got into that Kendi podcast episode where he talks about reparations in terms of giving the national parks back to Native American tribes.
I love that episode.
It's fantastic, right? And so I will link that because it's amazing. And then after you listen to that, you have to listen to every other episode because they're all so good.
I listen to it while I am doing my plant girl stuff. So I'll be like digging through some roots. I'll hear something that I go, yes! And then all of a sudden dirt goes flying. It's great.
It's really not like a calming thing.
You get pumped up by it.
For sure. And he talks about, my point in bringing that up is Kendi talks about just like asking for national parks to be given back is like a huge ask, but it's what's deserving. They're deserving of something that big, something that really recognizes all of the harm. I mean, it doesn't make things like even or doesn't make things square, but like that big of a recognition that harm was done. That's the scale of what we should be asking for.
There was a township in Virginia, I believe it was Virginia, that became the first like municipal government to actually pay the ancestor or the descendants of slaves reparations, like monetary reparations. I remember seeing that in the news and people being like, that is so profound. And I'm sitting here thinking, no, it's not really that profound. Just pay people what they're due.
It's actually what we were promised a long time ago and it hasn't been fulfilled yet.
Like, I don't know why people are freaking out like that's a profound thing to do. No, it's the right thing to do, people.
Yeah, definitely. Like a lot of the criticism and the feedback from all of the, like specifically the hate crimes that have been happening is like, this is just going to get worse because it's steeped in white supremacy. until America could really cope with and really look in the face and not make things right, but really deal with the consequences of what has been done in our past and what is continuing to be done. If we can't like read that kid's book about how to be anti-racist, or if we can't give land back to Native Americans, or if we can't do reparations, then like this, it's not going to be good.
Like, we say systems of justice in this country are systems of injustice, and we have an injustice system. It can't be more clear than whenever we look at our legislative branch of government and whenever we look at things like reparations that are long past due.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we doing right now? We have legislators that are actively trying to erase history.
Mm-hmm. Banning books. And until it's recognized, you can't just keep running away from it. That's what we've done, and we are where we are now because of it. Until we can face it, it's going to be. I remember AOC talking about I think this was early on, but she was like, if we don't find a real way to talk about race in this country, then we're in trouble.
We've been in trouble.
It's scary to think what like more could happen, but at the same time, I know.
Like, I have hope because we have this magical thing called the internet, where people of color are not like, do not have to necessarily have to do the emotional labor to educate white people anymore, which is great. But at the same time, we have these evil things called internet algorithms that if you just like want to go into an echo chamber of like banning critical race theory, you will be on that fun Ferris wheel for a long time.
Yes, that's true, because who you follow and like the circles you're in definitely determines what you see. Because like in my circle, I follow a lot of some of my favorite politicians, and then I follow like a lot of people who are in this like very inclusive space. So I see a lot of that material. But if you're in another space, the same is true. You see a lot more of what you want to see. It is terrifying.
That's fine. Oh my gosh. What's next after this?
I think it's our last 2 chapters.
Parenting while marginalized. Oof. I am not a parent. I'm scared of being a parent. I'm terrified.
Yes. Particularly in this day and age, certainly. I
love how Kendall put parenting while marginalized literally after reproductive justice.
Yes. She knew what she was doing.
It's only fair. So we're going to be doing that. And I have an idea that I'm going to be discussing with you after we finish recording. But let me know what you think. But for now, I'm really excited that we had this conversation and how all of it comes back to the whole system is screwed and we need to have another system.
Yeah, we do a good job of ending on a practical note.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Hannah. This is always a joy.
Yay. All right. I will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow.